So yeah, it's been a long time, hasn't it? I mean, it's been 8 months since I uploaded a video to this channel, and while this originally was for my 300 subscriber special, we're at 390 subscribers now, so needless to say, this is a long time coming. I've seen a few comments asking me how I make my OVs, so I thought it would be a great idea to make a video where I talk about exactly that. Plus, moving forward, I plan to make less chiptune and OV related content and more general style content. So expect more things like edits, commentaries, and other various things.
Hi, can I get you anything?
Think of this video as bridging the gap between my old content and my new content. Will I still make chiptunes and OVs? Probably, but don't expect it to be a regular thing that I upload on this channel. With all that being said, let's get started. So, first things first, let's explain what's an OV. An oscilloscope view, or OV, is a video that takes a song, splits it into its individual voices, and then runs each voice through an oscilloscope. For those who don't know what an oscilloscope is, it's a device that visualizes waves, like electricity, radio, and of course, sound. Think of it like those music videos where they show all the instruments playing, but instead of seeing the instrument, you're seeing the sound. For years, OVs have been the go-to choice for visuals within the chiptune community. Not only do they look cool, but they can also show us how each of the instruments combine in subtle ways to make the final piece. This is especially true for OVs of old video game music. Sound hardware of the 80s and 90s were pretty limited, so many composers relied on special tricks to get a richer sound. Thanks to emulation, we can rip the sound data from these old games, split their voices, and create an OV that can show us how these tricks were done. So, now that you know what an OV is, we can start talking about making one. Now, when I'm picking a song for an OV, there are two choices. Choice number one, spend hours upon hours slaving away, trying to craft a beautiful masterpiece for the ears. Or choice number two, steal someone else's. Now, going through option one could take an entire video on its own, so I'm not going to go into detail here. I'm just going to briefly talk about what software I use to make music. For the NES, I like to use 0cc Famitracker. It's a nice little music tracker that lets you make NES music. You get the standard NES shebang, 2 pulse waves, a triangle wave, a noise channel, and 1 channel for samples, but you can even add extra chips that were used in different games, like Konami's VR6 or VR7, Sunsoft's S5B, or my personal favorite, the Namco N163. For every other console, I use Defamask. Is what I would say if it weren't for the fact that it's $10 and Furnace does everything that Defamask does, but more, and it's free. Seriously though, Furnace lets you make music for any retro sound chip or console you can think of. It even lets you mix and match them and make your own Frankenstein fantasy. You can even make music for the Nintendo DS. The DS isn't retro, that console's like a baby. It's only 20 years old. What in the actual fuck? If I'm not trying to emulate a specific console, I'll just use OpenMPT. OpenMPT supports common tracker formats that were common in the 1990s, like MOD, XM, and IT, as well as its own special format. I like to use the XM format the most, since that and a Famitracker use similar codes for the different effects. Making music is a lot easier if you don't have to constantly look at a manual every 5 minutes. So that's about it for option 1. Let's talk about option 2. For option 2, we're gonna have to find a song. Now, we can't just go on YouTube, look up the song we want, download the audio, and call it a day. Remember, we need a way to isolate each voice so we can record them in an oscilloscope. And to do that, you need the tracks that were recorded before mixing them together into the final song. So, unless the original tracks for your song of choice are publicly available, or your favorite artist happens to be really into oscilloscope views, then you're out of luck. This is also one of the reasons why most OVs use songs that were made using a sound chip or some kind of sequence format like MIDI or MOD. Lossless recordings, like waves, take up a large amount of storage space, and lossy recordings, like MP3s or OGGs, take a lot of computational power to decompress, so for a while, consoles couldn't handle using recordings for their music. Rather than a recording, all the information needed to play a song, like tempo, notes, instruments, etc., was stored as a file that could be interpreted by the console's sound hardware. Most home consoles and computers, made prior to the 1990s, used some variation of this method for their sound and music. Even on consoles that could handle full recordings, like the PS1 and PS2, developers would opt to store music as a MIDI or some other format since it took up less space on the disc, leaving more space for extra content. It's much easier to make OVs for music that is stored this way, because all the information needed to play is here, in the file. It's the equivalent of having the original tracks needed to make a master recording. So, BSG, where do you get these files, you might be asking? Well, there are a few ways. If the song is made by a chiptune artist, then most likely you can find a download link somewhere. Most artists will include download links in the description section of their uploads. In addition to letting you download the song as a pre-rendered format like a WAV, artists give you the option to download the project files. You can then open the corresponding editor and export each channel from there. If the song is not made by a chiptune artist, but is at least somewhat popular, then most likely it has already been ripped and uploaded to some archive. Often, these rips will be stored as .vgm files. These files contain song data stored in binary, plus a header with song information such as author name, date, names of sound chips he uses, etc. Websites like VGMRips.net are full of music from commercial games that have been ripped by the community and converted into VGMs. Once you've downloaded a .vgm file, you can then use a software like Multidumper to read the VGM file and make recordings for each channel. Now what do you do if your song is none of those things? Well... if you can't find the song in line, then you're gonna have to rip the song yourself. Now the process of ripping a song varies depending on the system the song was made for, but the general process goes something like this. Number 1. You, legally, purchase and rip the ROM that contains a song you want to rip. Number 2. You use some software that can extract the song and convert it into another format. And number 3. You take that newly converted song and use another software to export each channel to a WAV. This process is easier said than done, and how easier said than done depends on what console the song comes from. Thankfully, there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube on how to rip music from games, so I would recommend starting from there. Regardless of where you get the song, it's important that you credit the person who made the original song in both the title and the description. I had issues with my OV of Wire's cover of Tintin on the Moon, where I originally put their name in just the description, but I could tell from the comments that a lot of people thought I had made the cover, so putting credits in the title will help prevent further confusion. Okay, so we have our song, we ripped all the channels, now it's time to make the oscilloscope view. Let me just go on Amazon, look up oscilloscopes, and no! We're not doing that. No. We don't need an actual oscilloscope to make an oscilloscope view. Now, some earlier OVs did use real oscilloscopes, but today, there's plenty of software that can generate OVs automatically. For my videos, I use this software called Oscilloscope. But before we go and render our OV, let's do some cleanup work. I like to use Audacity to touch up the audio files before I export them to Oscilloscope. I don't mess with the tracks too much. Often, I'm just using Audacity to mix all the tracks together. If the song loops, I'll add a fade-out effect to the end of each track. This gives the OV a proper ending instead of just cutting off abruptly. Alright, now on to Oscilloscope. In Oscilloscope, I can pick the master audio file, which files to record the oscilloscope view, and how the oscilloscope will look. I like to color code each channel based on instrument. For example, for an NES song, I'll use one color for the pulse waves, one color for the triangle, another for the noise, and so on. You can also add labels to each channel, so I'll do that as well. I'll click Preview to show how everything looks, make any changes if necessary, click Render, and we're done. Alright, Now let's take a look at what we made. So, that's pretty much it when it comes to making OVs. A lot of it can seem overwhelming at first, but once you've done the whole process a few times, you'll get the flow of things. A huge thanks goes to the community for making all these tools. They make the process of making OVs much easier, and I, and probably many others, wouldn't be able to make these videos without them. And another huge thanks goes to you guys for watching. I know this channel is small, but the fact that there are more people subscribed to my channel than people that I've met in my entire life is crazy. I graduated college, finally, and I hope to use the new free time I have to make videos like these. I have some ideas for the next few videos. Some are related to chiptunes and OVs, and the others are... yeah. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you later.